It may be called the Lenin School, but students here are happy to tell you they love Americans. And there's no surprise when you ask about their favorite music and movies.
The music of John Lennon and the Beatles and the Bee Gees.
One of my favorite movies are You, Me and Dupree.
Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Judas Priest.
This is one of the top high schools in the country. Many of the teenagers speak English or are trying to learn. The 4,000 students study math, science, literature, and play extracurricular sports like kids everywhere. They're comfortable and savvy enough to talk about American politics. If I had to ask you about the most important thing that happened in the United States in the last month, what would you tell me?
The election of the President Obama.
And I think that Obama is going to be a good president, not for being a black president, no, because he is taking change in the relationship of the United States with the world.
Cubans are up to date on world politics, but they're much more interested in subjects closer to home, such as what Obama can mean for their own country. The U.S. trade embargo on Cuba was imposed by President Kennedy in 1962. One way or another, it adds up to being a barrier for Cubans every day. This father and son have been restoring old American cars for years. It's not easy to do.
Nothing can come into Cuba from the United States. Cuba is under blockade. The blockade affects me all the time. The parts I need are in the United States. I can't go to the United States to get them, and they can't bring them to me.
90 miles across the Florida Strait, this is the Malecón, the walkway along Havana's seawall. After 50 years of isolation, Cubans hope the United States will finally drop the economic embargo. There have been frequent protests outside the U.S. intersection in Havana. Once after former President George W. Bush tightened the embargo, making it more difficult for Cuban Americans to visit and send money to Cuba. And there was this tit-for-tat exchange. After the United States streamed headlines at the intersection that the Cuban government considered an insult to its sovereignty, the Cubans retaliated by blocking the view with these huge black flags. After President Obama took office, the Cubans replaced them with much smaller flags. In fact, Ricardo Alarcón, the president of the Cuban National Assembly and an influential leader, makes it clear Cuba has now toned down the rhetoric about the United States after years of protesting Bush administration policies.
Mr. Obama doesn't represent those failed policies. He represents precisely change. When you listen to his speeches and so on, you feel attracted to that. It's a completely different version of the previous guy in the White House.
Despite that, amid the carousing and cruising on the Avenue of the Presidents, a weekend hangout for young people, not everyone is convinced that the Cold War with the United States will be ending anytime soon.
I heard that Obama isn't going to be thinking so much of Cuba because of the economic crisis, but we hope he'll be letting Cubans travel here and send money home to their families.
We have hopes, even more than the rest of the countries in the world.
Politics aside, all sorts of Cubans crave better relations with the United States. Among them, Roberto Fernandez Retamar, a prominent writer.
It's well known that, unhappily, politically we're very far from the administrations of the states. Culturally, we're very close to the United States. Music, for instance.
Back at the Lenin School, we heard many students express the hope for closer ties with America. How many of you have family members living in the United States that you would like to visit? Many students said they miss friends and relatives who have left the country. I asked this young woman if she'd like to visit the United States.
I would love it. I have cousins born there. My aunt and uncle were born there. I haven't been able to visit them, but they can only come here every 3 years.
For Cubans, the United States isn't just a foreign country, it's nearby and very close to the heart. I'm Peter Eisner for Worldfocus in Havana.